Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Olga Vyshlinski. I'm the General Director of the Center for Economical Strategy. We're starting our forum in the first day of winter that, as has been promised by the political leaders of Ukraine, is going to be the most challenging winter in Ukrainian history. And we're about to start our event dedicated to the resilience and anti-fragility of Ukraine. What are the lessons that we have got from the 2022 that was really challenging for all of us? We have been supported by the International Renaissance Foundations and we're by the Embassy of Sweden in Ukraine. They've helped us with the financial matters. We've had the informational support by the Economiczna Pravda edition and our journalist colleagues that we're really grateful to as well. What is important now for us that Ukraine has got into this war with a different level of resilience and anti-fragility in different sectors. In some of the sectors, we had a better situation going on, like, for example, we have seen it in our energy sector, because even despite the very harsh and hard hits on the energy system of Ukraine, the energy system of Ukraine is holding on. On the other hand, in the financial sector, in the issues of the budget, we're still holding on to international support and assistance because we didn't have the needed amount of resilience there. We didn't have a pillow here, a cushion here that would give us the opportunity to go through this challenging times on our own. So we're going to be discussing 5 main topics right now, and we're going to start with this umbrella area of assistance and support, which is the international assistance. We know that the war in Ukraine is justified because we are protecting the whole world, but Ukraine expects, and our international partners are ready to support us in this war and helping us to provide the existence of Ukrainian people and Ukraine in these harsh times. I would like to pass the floor to Serhii Sydorenko, who is the editor-in-chief of the Europejska Pravda edition, and he's going to be moderating our first panel that is titled "The World Supports Ukraine." So Serhii, please, the floor is yours. Yes, I hope that my mic is already working. Okay, good. So I hope that our international and online audience can hear us, and that's really good that they can hear us right now in the Zoom or on Facebook broadcasting. So we're going to switch to English.
One simple reason, because we switched to English because it's a panel about foreign assistance, and that means that we also have foreigners here. And I'm delighted to, first of all, to present our panel, and then I will say a few words about studies that we have conducted with Center of Economic Strategy. So we have Olga Zykova, Deputy Minister of Finance of Ukraine, who is responsible for foreign aid, let's say, in general. We have Bertram from Moltke, Deputy Ambassador of Germany in Ukraine, who serves on this position for 3 years as far. Yeah, so very much aware of how foreign aid has developed. We have Frederik Coene, head of cooperation at the EU delegation at Ukraine, who also works with some part of assistance. We have Iryna Shyba, deputy head of EU anti-corruption initiative, who is very important to me as for moderator because she serves kind of link between Ukrainian part and European part, being Ukrainian and working in the EU, let's say, I would say EU structure, even if it's not an official EU structure. And also it's important that Iryna would help us to show what can Europe do in terms of anti-corruption. And last but not least, we have Rostyslav Tomenchuk, head of the department for coordination of international technical assistance in a Secretariat of Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, who is responsible for one of dimensions of foreign assistance, and we will show that further on. So I would ask organizer to show a slides that I have prepared. Колеги, покажіть, будь ласка. Very short presentation of we can say that it's a study if there is not that much scientific, let's say. I've tried to elaborate what kind of assistance we have got before. So before 2022, we do understand that the world and Ukraine in particular have changed on 21st of February, but I would say that the change was not that rapid. But anyway, before 2022, Ukraine was perceived by the outer world as a country fighting for its democratic future, despite, well, frozen or like that conflict. Ukrainians will understand this word "постреливали," so it was perceived like that by the world, despite we have got that aggression even that time. But conflict with Russia was not perceived as the key challenge. And rather, the key challenge was fight. Можна повернути, будь ласка, презентацію? Okay, I will try not to waste time to recall what I made there. So that time, the key assistance was focused on transferring Ukraine into a country with good governance, a country which has a democratic future, and so on. Starting from 2022, not only from February 24, but in general, we have got a major shift, not only in our current situation, we have got a major shift in perception of Ukraine. Колеги, я не можу переключати, якщо можете переключити. And now the foreign assistance is focused not on democratic change, it's focused on literally everything. And to show what does it mean everything, please switch a slide. Next slide. Yeah. There is one of graphs, let's say, it shows the US agencies of Ukraine. It's an official data on federal websites that accumulate all state agencies, and it shows the dynamics from 23 or like that. We see a line which increases, and then we have a rapid increase. And that is the way how the EU have changed within this year. It was not just an increase, it was a cosmic space jump, let's say. To understand how we can cope with that, we have to understand what kinds of foreign aid we have. Because that's clear that in any case, with such a huge foreign support, we will definitely find some challenges, some troubles that we will have to overcome. That's not because of Ukraine. That's a natural challenge for every country that needs such a huge amount of foreign support. I've tried to divide it in 4 groups, and later we will elaborate all of them. The first group is a general, let's say, budget aid. When aid comes to Ukraine, with no designation that aid have to go for such kind of expenditure. It goes to mostly to central, to national budget, but also we see that some local budgets do have that type of aid. For instance, Lviv has got this kind of loan from EBRD. They've managed to convince them that they also can have a loan just for how do you say that in English, погашення дефіциту бюджету, like, yeah, to cover budget deficit, local budget deficit. Second, let's say, dimension is a targeted foreign aid when we have either loan or grant support, which will be spent for specific goal, for specific purposes. And I do not include military purposes here. The third is, of course, military support, because both with in kind or non-monetary support and monetary support, because the latter quickly is transferred in the first one. So if we get money for buying weaponry, we buy that weaponry. And the first is, let's say, others. Doesn't mean that they are less important, but they are so mixed. Like, for instance, international technical assistance. Like, for instance, I also include the assistance spent by Ukrainians to their relatives. It is also help. It is help not to Ukrainian budget, but it helps to Ukrainians. It helps for Ukrainian economic stability. Also, in this first, let's say, group, it is humanitarian aid, which comes not to budget as a monetary support, but in material forms, let's say. I'd like to stress very much that in all of these groups, I do not separate loans and grants, because currently we are in a situation when we hear from different players, both inside Ukraine and outside, that loans can be converted to grants, at least partially, in close future. I don't expect it to be easier, but there is at least such expectations. That's why we cannot easily separate it. But it's a topic, one of topics of our discussion, because when we have loans, it means that we ruin our macroeconomical indicators, because Ukraine is becoming hugely indebted country. So to save time, I would not go into details on each of other slides. We should better elaborate that in our discussion. And we would build our panel as follows. Every one of us would have time for short presentation, short reflection on this, let's say, of support for short maybe ideas of further change of foreign support, and then we will go into discussion between us. And also I encourage our audience to pose questions on Zoom chat, and we will read those of them that seem to be attractive. And sorry, last but not least, I have to stress on this division of four, let's say, pillars. It seems to me very important that currently we have foreign support mostly focused on non-focused or general aid, so non-designated budget aid. Military, that's simple. It have to continue. Ukraine have to win. With first one, it's very important that currently foreign donors are providing Ukraine money that do not have clear designation purpose. I expect that this can change, and this will change, because, for instance, if money are provided for rehabilitation of infrastructure, it becomes purpose. Let's discuss this assumption, whether you agree with it or not. Olga Zykova is the first speaker. Olga, how do you see this scheme? What do you see as important in terms of this division or non-division between loans and grants? Floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, first of all, as you started from the period before 2022, I would also like to track ourselves back into, let's say, December of 2021. And the picture we will see is that we had quite a good footage towards entering 2022 with budget deficit 3%, with debt to GDP ratio less than 50%, and with budgetary overperformance, which in fact created for us the proper buffer, the financial buffer to enter the first months of war. As when the war started on February 24th, we did not expect a big amount of external funding to come. And this would help us, in fact, to withstand the very first months of March and April, the very first months of war, financially wise. The war required very quick actions. And in fact, the measures taken and the policy mixed helped us to overstand the very first big shock. And then we turned to many rounds of negotiations with our international partners, with G7, with the World Bank, to find the solution how to deal further, as we have already cut all non-priority expenditures, and our budget became a very simple one. In fact, it was the combination, and it is still the combination of military expenditures and social spendings. In terms of military expenditures, we do understand that we cannot use any kind of external support for this particular purpose, budgetary-wise. We cover these expenditures ourselves with the money of taxpayers, with issuance of war bonds. In fact, if we speak about the social spendings, this is where the external funding is vital for Ukraine. And this external funding, as you rightly said, is coming in the form of grants and loans. And yes, it's due to the obvious reasons grants are more favorable for us, because it doesn't create and increase the debt stock for us and create a negative impetus for the market. But in fact, we do realize that even loan form of assistance is crucial for us to be able to pay salaries for healthcare workers, for teachers, to pay pensions, and to cover critical social expenditures. And here comes the question whether we have the tight or untight financing. So for instance, tight financing is the US grants. The US grants are coming to us through the verified channel of the World Bank project called PEACE. This is the project which covers the critical social expenditures. It verifies the data. It creates the frame for particular eligible expenditures to be covered. And here comes the question whether it's attractive for us or not. Definitely tight financing is less attractive than untied, because from the perspective of debt management policy, it goes against the principle of fungibility of money. Money should be fungible. But still, we do have, in case of tight financing, the very clear picture of what the money is spent for, how it is tracked. So this is, in fact, the use of the proceeds-based use of money. And at the end of the story, we have the verified data, which can be reported to the US side. So I mentioned this sample of the US grants as the external support to Ukraine, because it's important to understand that we do have the very clear scheme how to verify and report after the usage of the money. Coming back to this year, budget deficit during all these 9 months of war was at the amount of 5 billion per month. It did not change, and it will not change till the end of this year. Unfortunately, not a single month showed us that the gap was closed or filled fully. But we do realize that the support attracted during this period, this is almost $25 billion as of now, in fact helped the government to proceed covering core governmental functions for the government to keep running and keeping the economy afloat. So maybe I will leave some room for further discussions, but this is my first reflection to what you said.
Thank you very much, Olga. Bertram, I would invite you as a representative of G7 presidency, because we do understand that coverage of this budget gap is mostly filled by G7 member states, including the EU as a participant of G7. How do you see, is there a chance, or is there a clarity that this budget gap will be filled next year in better proportions than this year?
Well, thank you very much, Serhii, and good morning to everyone. First of all, let me say that indeed what your survey produced is probably also something that we would have to say. There's a before February this year and after. Before, it was indeed something, the contributions that either G7 countries or the EU countries or any other donor have provided to support Ukraine in their nation building and in their rapprochement, so to say, to the European Union, has been quite strong, has been consistent, and this has not changed since the start of this war of aggression. This will continue in the same in the same fields, be it in a more, I would say, more stringent and way, and also with probably a lot more funds. I can say that not for the whole of the G7 countries, but I can see that for my own country, Germany, that since February, the expenditure that went towards Ukraine, and I will leave all the military assistance outside that calculation, has dramatically risen to go only on the bilateral side about 5 billion euro, something that in 10 months' time we had, of course, never seen. So I would suspect that you would have the same kind of graph for my country that you have shown for the Americans. Now, you asked me whether there was any chance that the G7 countries would continue with their assistance, and I don't think that this is a question. I think that the G7 as G7 and member states of G7 countries which are united in the European Union or in NATO all say the same thing. We will stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes to fight back this war of aggression that Russia has and still wields against your country. When it comes to the amounts, I know that within the European Union there's quite a substantial package that is being prepared for next year. It will, of course, not foot the whole of the budget gap, but it's not meant to fill the whole. The Americans will probably chip in, and the IFIs will also probably chip in. I don't know, nobody probably knows how the actual monthly gap will be, because we don't know what Russia has still in stock for this country. But I'm very much convinced that the assistance will continue and will continue to be substantial, and that in all areas, financial or humanitarian, economic, and of course military-wise.
Thank you very much. Frederik, I would ask you, after this very positive, I would say, intervention by G7 presidency with pledges that we will have that support, I would ask you to focus on types of support. So I have presented my version of this division. It's not an axiom, you can have yours, but it's definitely clear that there are some types of support, and these types should be changed, just because in 2022 we've got unprecedented but also unexpected support, which was not planned. Now you're about to plan. How do you see? Would you expect something more, some more conditions, some more tie to purposes of this funding? Floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me here as well. Well, before answering your question, I quickly want to say a few words on what the EU is doing, because also before 22, EU was providing lots of support. If we're looking from 2014 till 21, had approximately 17 billion in support. I mean, that is not only the EU from the EU budget, but also together with the member states, for example, Germany included. So if we're looking at that, I mean, that's already a huge amount. So it already shows that before the war, the EU was very committed in supporting Ukraine. But with this war of aggression, the support was just stepped up. And if we're looking now, since the beginning of the war, the EU has contributed approximately 19.7 billion euros in support to Ukraine. That is non-military. If we're talking about military, then you have another 3.1 billion from the European Peace Facility, plus also member states that have individually also contributed. So again, the figures are really I mean, unprecedented. I mean, unprecedented is some word that diplomats like to use, but I think in this case, this is really unprecedented. I mean, I think in both our careers, we have never seen anything of this magnitude. And it really started immediately after the war that we were able to repurpose some of the programs that we had. For example, EUACI was one of the quickest actually to really change the way they were working and provide already different type of assistance. But then we also had humanitarian assistance coming in. Also there we're at close to $500 million for this year alone, which again is an amount that you rarely see for the EU. And then of course we have the budget support and so on and so on. And for the future, because that's what you're mainly interested in, right? The first thing is that there is this plan to provide 18 billion euros as macro-financial assistance. That basically means that's a loan on very beneficial terms for Ukraine. But it's not that it just comes like that. There are conditions tied to that. Of course, these discussions, I mean, the conditions are being discussed, but it's very much related to the reforms that are being carried out. We cannot just give money like that. I mean, you mentioned in the slide, no purpose. I would change it. I mean, there is a purpose, right? But basically, this 18 billion that will go to the state budget, it is not like what the deputy minister was saying, that it is like what the Americans are doing, that they are really looking like it's a very targeted way of providing financing. So this is the macro financial assistance. But apart from that, there is going to be other types of assistance as well. We had budget support programs in the past. We will have them in the future. So these are grants. This year, we already had 620 million. There's another 66 in the pipeline. The decision was adopted just yesterday. We are going to disperse it still this year, I hope. Normally, budget support, how the way we work is we have specific conditions in every reform area. Now, for what was happening here, we went for a slightly different approach where we looked at expected output. So it is not that we said that, for example, 120 million has to be used for this and that, but we had a certain output that we had expected, some kind of policy-related issues that had to be carried out.
Like, for instance, because policy-related issues are reforms normally. What do you mean?
Well, normally it's reforms, right? But in the war situation, the first thing, for example, the first budget support operation that we had for 120 million, which was in April, if I remember correctly, I mean, this was not a moment to say that now you have to push on anti-corruption reforms. Yes, it's very important, but the state was on the verge of, well, it was an existential question, right? So without these funds, so what we did was we had expected outputs related to, for example, coordination, humanitarian issues, energy policy, and so on. So it was not that we were requiring, like in the past, this specific law needs to be adopted and implemented. It was a different way of formulating the conditions. And the same applied for the other 500 million. Now the 66 million that is coming in is very specifically for the rehabilitation of schools. It's part of a 100 million pledge, so 66 through budget support, 34 through humanitarian aid, through the colleagues from ECHO. So sometimes it's very difficult to see, is it really targeted, is it not targeted, and so on. So in our terminology, it is non-targeted, but it's still related to a specific domain. Now, for the future, we will continue with this kind of operations. So, for example, now we are working on the preparation of a program for magnitude still to be decided, but it's quite substantial, for the rehabilitation of critical infrastructure. As we see now that, for example, bridges have been destroyed, electricity, infrastructure, and so on, this needs to be renovated. We have also seen that the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Infrastructure, for example, they've really been very impressive in the speed of rehabilitating some of this infrastructure. Going through other delivery mechanisms would be much slower. And this is why we want to work directly through the existing structures that are here in the country, and by providing budget support and agreeing with the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Infrastructure, that it is specifically for this type of works. We do believe that this is one of the best ways forward. Now, with a big reconstruction that will come eventually, we're not there yet, right? I mean,
we
have to see.
Let's return to the reconstruction later.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you very much, Iryna. As anti-corruption was mentioned, now it's your time to intervene with your experience, and I guess that it's really time to share with our audience how does it sometimes change, because an example of EUACI is an example how the EU can provide the flexibility in changing purpose of these funds. Do you see that this change is, let's say, fixed? Is that forever? And could you very shortly elaborate to those who are not aware what has happened in the very beginning or after Russian full-scale aggression?
Let's start maybe with the 24th of February, where the EU Anti-Corruption Initiative, a EU-funded project implemented by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, was a project that was dealing with the key anti-corruption institutions, building their capacity, developing training programs, working on legislation framework, but also providing grants to civil society to do a watchdog or advocacy work on anti-corruption reform. And then on 24th of February, we are waking up in this new reality when we understand that we need to do everything just to save lives of those people that we work with to help Ukraine resist. And we're thinking what we can do next. And before even we had our own answer, our colleagues from the EU delegations help us with that. They just 2 days after we received the green light to redirect our funds to provide all the emergency support that we can, basically besides military support. So we decided to divide our support in few areas. We identified the needs of our anti-corruption partners. Many of the anti-corruption experts from NABU, HAC, but also special anti-corruption prosecutors joined the armed forces or were just also needed the protective gear or generators or warm clothes because they were staying in Kiev protecting institutions. But also, which was the most surprising and amazing thing, they continued to deliver justice and do their work. The court hearings in the HAC didn't stop. The judges keep coming, considering cases, motions, and it was also such an amazing thing to see, and also was the proof that our work in the past with anti-corruption reform was really successful, because in the middle of the war, Ukraine's institutions, and not only anti-corruption, continued to work, continued to function. And we worked with them, but also we provided support to more than 14 civil society organizations who had network. We had already our reliable partners who we worked in the past. For example, Hlib Regulatory Hub was helping those people evacuating from the eastern Ukraine, coordinating them, assisting them with the logistics, with travels, providing food, providing shelter when they were picking up them from the trains. Then ANTAC, Anti-Corruption Action Center, was doing the communication campaigns, developing materials and telling EU what's going on in Ukraine. There were also other NGOs like Unique, the compliance agency that was helping business to relocate or advising them, and now they're also helping them to keep their compliance officers. But we also were doing things like providing equipment and bomb shelters. Many of our colleagues had to sleep in the bomb shelters, work in the bomb shelters themselves in the really cold places, and sitting there working on the memos and doing the payment requests to do this assistance.
So does it continue now, or you are trying to reverse? Yeah.
We're trying to go back. The idea was that we relocated 4 million euros in the first 4 months until May to buy all this emergency equipment and things that were needed, while the bigger projects were rolling out and assessing the needs. Because now I think there's a lot of other big, more specialized projects who know already what kind of protective gear is needed or how to logistically better organize the provision of humanitarian aid, and we had to learn it on the spot. So my colleagues who are anti-corruption experts had to actually find out what capacity of generator you need to have to power up the building of anti-corruption court. And this is something that I believe the people who are more specialized in that should do. But also because, as I mentioned, that anti-corruption institutions continue to work, we in June decided to go back to our more regular activities, but obviously they had to change. We need to adapt to new challenges, and we thought what we as a program, as a EU program, but also what our partners can do best to help Ukraine still resist the war. So many of investigation focused on the cases where Ukraine could get money for example, to go more into financial investigations or go after cryptocurrency, or how to confiscate the assets that could be seized for Ukraine and be delivered to the to Ukraine and to the army. So we decided to work on the 4 new topics, or like more focus on it, 4 topics. One is asset recovery. So we're helping with identifying the assets of Russians and training the institutions, but we also work on EU integration, integrity of reconstruction, and also helping to continue resilience of anti-corruption infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Iryna. Rostyslav, I think that it's high time for you to comment what also Iryna said, because to my knowledge, Iryna's project is also part of international technical assistance. It also has the same status, or Міжнародна технічна допомога, which you manage. This dimension of foreign support is not that much visible, but it is quite high. It's about €1 billion dollars now, it's equal per year, as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong. So this money flow should definitely also change somehow due to the war. How do you see, on your perspective, what do you expect from foreign donors? What do you expect from Ukrainian state and non-state institutions to change in their behavior with this money?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. First of all, what I want to say in the beginning about this your brief, what you presented in the beginning of this panel. The fact is, I think for our work, for us, it's most easy to structure aid for the 3 priorities. For example, it's a grants, yeah, it's a credits, and also it's some humanitarian aid. And in our work, we understanding this is structure, this is classification. It's more easy for understanding and for much more easy for development and for organize a different process for understanding how it's work, how it will be better. And of course, we can speak inside, if we speak about the humanitarian aid, of course, we understand it can be many programs, many instruments from the different countries. If we speak about the grants, of course, it will be continue discussion about the different project inside in country, or it will be some international organization, yeah. And also the fact is our budgetary support, we are also classified as a grant. Yes, I know that you can say that we can have the sum of credit and also your example about the Lviv region. But the fact is also, if we speak, first of all, it's a question of our Ministry of Finance. But as for me, as I understand, important to know that if some of region want to take a grant, or take a credit from European Bank of Reconstruction, of European World Bank, or World Bank, important to have some support from the government level, because it's money who come to Ukraine, and it's a finance where a government important to support that we are ready, that Lviv, for example, will be this is project partner for this credit. But in this situation, if we speak about the budgetary support, or we speak about the special support for Ukraine, in all time, in all version, it will be Ukraine as a government who will be speaking about this finance. Yeah. It cannot be some different local societies or maybe local authorities, yeah. And also what I want to add, some points can be interesting. The fact is that different countries have different strategies, also have the different budgetaries. Not all countries beginning business year in January. Of course, you know, we have many countries, many year cycles, and also different countries have different strategies. Here we speak about the European Union 21-27. The previous time will be 40-21, and also not the same situation in other countries. And when this is different countries planning some aids, technical aids, grants, humanitarian aids, they also write about this in different strategies for 5, for 3, for 2, for 7 years. options. And in this situation, it's not the same for understanding. And also, why I tell about this, because when beginning a war, we understand the situation is not the same of all. It's not easy to understand that if we have a war, and many countries will be beginning to help us. And also, I understand it's not easy for different countries to organize this transformation. Because, for example, if we speak about the project of anti-corruption or some other many projects, for example, now we have half of 1,000 projects in Ukraine who are in active status. Yeah, in this situation, we understand that this can be project for 1 year, for 2 years, for 3 years, for 5 years, and also different time where they can take a next tranche of finance. And it's very important where we can to analyze this. All countries who understands that important to help for Ukraine, they beginning to think how they can to transformation this finance what we have in Ukraine in different organizations. And of course, for example, if we speak now, if my colleagues tell now about what they're beginning to do in anti-corruption topics, of course it will be good option when we understand that NGO organization can to change different activities. You know how we signature of agreement of EUACI, yeah, for example, as a grant, we understand that we have many tasks, many indicators. It's very stability for the next few years. It's many pages, and for us, it's very important that I also want to repeat that different organizations, different countries understand that it's important to help now in this moment.
So it's not only one example when such projects change rapidly.
It was typically for all projects. Of course, if I understand that some of projects who cannot be to change some action, for example, if the tasks it cannot be open for modification, as I understand, because also it's information close, as I understand, this project could be stopped, yeah, for the 1 month, for 2 months, for understanding what they can to do, with this. And now I want to say, for example, I think, if I can correctly, I want to say concretely data, but I think there may be grant support as an international technical assistant was double, yeah, in this year, if we can to analyze with the previous year. It's also not easy because if you remember when I beginning to say that many countries have many strategies and many plans, it's important to change not only the one signature, it's important to change a different process. And also important to understand that all countries who support Ukraine in the technical assistance also gives the humanitarian aid. It's other instrument. It's not the same. It's other finance. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Rostyslav. I don't know if anyone follows Zoom questions because I see Slava has left somewhere. Okay, but anyway, I have a follow-up to that. Now we have heard from several our panelists that they see, let's say, a division between loans and grants. So let's not hide this elephant in the room. Do you see that Ukraine have to expect that loans would be converted to grants somehow in a close future? Do you have some dialogue on that with our partners, or it's rather a dialogue for future after we win the war?
Okay, thanks. As I've said, definitely grants are more preferable, and we are having negotiations with our international partners regarding keeping the system of providing international direct budgetary support to us next year in both forms. I will explain why. For instance, the European Union has very good practice and experience with us in terms of providing macrofinancial assistance. And this mechanism has been analyzed during 2022, and there were some obstacles within the scheme providing the tranches time-wise. So for the next year, what the European Commission did, and they did a great job, they made a mechanism for this macrofinancial assistance to come in a predictable and stable way. And this is what we need for the first place. Definitely, grants are more preferable, but it is even more preferable to have the financial support coming in a very stable and rhythmical way. For us, as the government and the Ministry of Finance, to have the ability to predict the spendings and to even maybe focus more on other aspects such as rapid recovery. Because we do understand that if not having the stable inflows, we will have to turn to monetary financing again, but we want to avoid it. We had quite a difficult time having this monetary financing this year in close cooperation with the National Bank, but this is not the tool we would like to rely on. And it's better for us to rely even on loans rather than on the, in fact, printing money. So I would say that macrofinancial assistance of the European Union, even given it is in the form of loans, these loans are on very affordable and favorable conditions. They are long-term. The interest rates are mostly covered by the member states, and we do understand that we already have the experience, and we have a clear picture how to deal with such partner as EU. US has the opportunity to provide grants, and this is also the matter of our negotiations for the next year, for the 9 months of 2023. As of now, we have, let's say, preliminary information that it would be the coverage of $1.1 billion per month. So in fact, we already have more or less clarity where we will be in January.
So less than this year. This year it was 1.5.
But we decreased the monthly budget deficit. So this year, the monthly budget deficit was 5 billion per month. Next year, it is 3 to 3.5 billion per month. And this data has already been verified by International Monetary Fund, as they took a look at our budgetary data, and the budget 2023 was approved and verified by international partners as well. So due to the fact that the monthly budget deficit is lower than the previous year, our partners have the same data as we do, as we share all of them, and they, in close coordination with each other, can step in with particular proposal on providing direct budgetary finance in the particular amount.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have, in fact, the same question to our European partners. It's up to you who would decide to answer. So are there some considerations on possible conversion, let's say, of loans to grants? Because, for instance, I will give you an example. Now, a week ago, like that, we've got a very good decision and very expected one from EBRD to provide loan to Ukraine. As far as I remember, or yeah, probably to Coene, 300 million euro, quite a high amount, to fix those energy grid, electric grid infrastructure items. And that's clear that it's not a business loan. It's an aid just to return to normal functioning. And I don't expect that Ukrenergo can generate extra revenue to serve this loan properly. Other discussions that this money should be somehow like, I don't know, like Greece way, or maybe, yeah, or maybe this should be like fixed when we get money from Russian assets.
No, at the end of the day, it's the member states that would have to decide on that. But let me say a few things. Look, I think the first thing is that there is no discussion on that, and there is actually no point in having the discussion now. First of all, no, really. First of all, we are still at a point where we are looking at, we have to disburse this 18 billion next year. This is not an easy discussion, right? Because you also know that countries in the EU also have difficulties with their own budget, especially if we're looking at inflation now. So it's already, I would say, a big achievement that EU member states are looking at providing this support to Ukraine. That's the first thing. I mean, you're not going to change the terms before you have even delivered something, right? The second thing is the maturity of these loans is 25 years. We're not in a hurry, neither from the side of Ukraine or us, because if it's just about the interest payments, I mean, this is not very high, and indeed there's a different mechanism. So the moment that Ukraine will have to pay back comes only in 25 years. So why should we have this discussion now?
I couldn't agree more with what you say, although I can very well understand that a donation is preferable, because then you know you will not have to pay it back. There's no point in trying to force a discussion which for the moment is not helpful. I think at the moment it is more important that the assistance to Ukraine is flowing and is being dispersed and is being found somewhere in all the different budgets of EU member states. You as a Ministry of Finance will very well know that in a state budget, money is just not in a big pot and you just disperse at libido. Sometimes it's simply not possible to do otherwise. The important thing is that the money flows, that the assistance flows, and what is going to happen in 25 years from now, I think, remains to be seen. My vision is that it's going to be very easy for a new, modern, built back better Ukraine to pay back whatever loan it has to be paid back.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thank you, Iryna. I would ask you to focus on another assumption that I got. I think that while really we just discovered that we have some purpose of money provided by the US, I did not know that. To be frank, I thought that it's like a general support, but microfinancial assistance by the EU is support like in general budget. It is not that much focused. And it also means that foreign governments or foreign citizens would be very cautious to provide money if they see that there is some misspending of this money in Ukraine. And we used to see sometimes maybe even disinformation, focused disinformation to show that Ukraine is not properly spending money. Sometimes there was a ground for that, but I'm afraid that if we have that kind of negative signals, that could undermine money flow. Do you see, as a representative of anti-corruption initiatives, that this threat is there? And do you see ways to tackle that if you agree with my assumption?
Of course, the risk of corruption or not transparent division of this fund is something that we mentioned in every discussion on the discussion but also by citizens of Ukraine when we're talking about revenue engineering. And sometimes, yes, we cannot say that Ukraine is some magical assumption from the law. There is no country in the world that is corruption, and the more money is flowing to the country, the risk of corruption is always higher. It's not just because of Ukraine is some kind of special country or bad country, it just happens like that. But another aspect is also that
But another problem is that injustice, do you hear me better now? Yes, great. Yep. That injustice that people can feel when they think that some aid is distributed unequally. For example, we supporting the ACP in the studies on the humanitarian aid delivery, and sometimes people who don't receive the aid on the ground and they feel that they were unjustly treated, they think it's corruption. Sometimes it's just inefficiency or bad management or lack of information or lack of transparency. And the first thing that also citizens of Ukraine think is that this is corruption. So this is why you need to have this transparency, not just for the purpose of tackling or preventing corruption, but also because of building trust and building reputation and showing that there is distributed fairly. So yes, there is a need for transparency on the different levels, not just only for the support, but for all the support that is being delivered to build this trust between citizens of Ukraine and the government, Ukrainian government and the EU governments, Ukrainian government and the EU citizens who are taxpayers, who are delivering their money to help Ukraine, and they taking it from their families, from their communities to help us to defeat the democratic values of EU, yes, but it's also, we need to understand that these money are not taken from the cloud. And if I may comment on the previous question, it's been as a Ukrainian citizen now, not as a EU representative, I think it's also important to Ukrainians to think where we are, how we can also generate this money, how we can manage funds more efficiently, how we can distribute funds more efficiently, how we, again, with the anti-corruption infrastructure, but other institutions, try to actually generate those resources right now ourselves.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Iryna. Rostyslav, I have a focused question to you, a very short one for short answer because we are running out of time. There is another issue that, works quite the contrary to undermine mutual trust between Ukrainians and let's say foreigners, because some part of foreign support is perceived as like those foreigners just invite their consultants who raise huge salaries here and leaves nothing to Ukraine. Have there been this problem before, and do you expect it to be tackled now in new reality of Ukraine and new reality of foreign support?
Thank you. I think it's a typical situation not only for Ukraine. If we speak about it, because we must understand that because very often we can hear that we work to have a much more technical assistant. As for me, it's some not very clear formulation, yeah, because it's not investigate, it's not a finance for business, it's not for development, it's a money from other countries because they want to help for other countries, yeah. And in this situation, we are not hunters, yeah, who are search where we can take this money, because it's a free option. There's some of country or some organization ready to give finance for second countries. Also, if you can to open the same finance site of the. Yes, we have any time. Sorry. Yes, but the fact is, for us, I'm really very happy that the situation will change in June 25, where we have the status of candidate. For me, this status is our other dialogues, our step-by-step methodology for the membership will be changed. All system, all networking for the status things. And for me, it's very important that part of government support will be much more bigger. If we can speak that we have some systems for control, systems for management, systems for organization work with different finance resources. It's my small answer for your question.
Thank you very much. It's really a pity that we have to stop because I think that the discussion is very interesting. If we have 2 minutes, no? Not more. Not more. Okay, Bertram, would you manage in 1 minute and then 1 minute for me to conclude?
I will try. We've talked a lot about money. But I just wanted to pinpoint the fact that many countries, neighboring countries, in fact, do provide assistance in just human way by just housing the millions of Ukrainian refugees and children, providing them with something to live or providing them with jobs, and you have it. I think this is also something that needs to come in the equation. This is not monetary, this is simply human, and I think that's equally important.
I do agree, and I have to thank to every of you for participation. I think that the discussion was really fruitful. Even me, I've discovered something new which was not public yet, and we can say for sure that now we've got a pledge that support will continue. We have quite a positive signals even from Ministry of Finance that we are decreasing our budget deficit. We will cope with even a bit in a decreased support from the US, and we will definitely not make a tragedy from a fact that some support comes not as grants but as loans. And Ukraine will revive. Ukraine will fit with these loans. Ukraine will be a prosperous country with help of our foreign friends and partners. Thank you, everyone, and thanks to all those who followed our discussion.
Дякую, Сергію, дякую, колеги. Дякую всім, хто взяв участь в цій першій панелі, хто дивився на неї. Буквально за 1 хвилину ми починаємо наступну панель. Це вона має назву майже як дитяча книжка, але для дорослих. Фінансовий сектор, який не впав. Це буде дискусія про банківський сектор. Насамперед залишайтеся, ми переходимо від грошей для держави до грошей для кожного з нас.